Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the Multifamily Methods Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, James Gleason, and it's been a good week this week. I have been quite excited lately. For those of you who don't know, I've pivoted basically my entire philosophy as a real estate investor this year. So when I got started, my focus was all about growth. How many units can I get? How much can I increase my net worth? What can I get my equity to? A lot of vanity and ego in play there, but also just wanting to be successful. This year I've gotten to a point where I'm really happy with my unit count. I'm very happy with, my net worth, my equity, my portfolio value. And so this year I've sort of pivoted. And I've thought to myself, the pros of growing more versus the cons of losing everything. Growing more aggressively is just simply not worth it to me anymore. I've seen too many horror stories. I've read about too many horror stories from 2008. People, I don't want to be dark, but people committing suicide and people getting really depressed and losing everything that they've worked so hard for because they lose their entire life savings and empire over making poor investment decisions, whether it's not having enough liquidity or over leveraging or whatever it is. And so I don't want to be a part of that statistic. And so for me this year, I have $60 million worth of real estate. I have over 450 units. Retirement's not an issue for me. Net worth is not an issue for me. And so I am pivoting this year from trying to acquire more units to focusing on my cash flow, my income, and my liquidity. And so I have a goal. I'd like to get to $2 million of liquidity before I start aggressively growing again. And, with $2 million of liquidity, there is almost no situation that could take place where I'm going to have to bring $2 million to the table at once. So it's perhaps a little bit higher than what I need in terms of liquidity. But I will know that peace of mind is more valuable to me than, growing anymore. What am I doing all of this for? I'm ultimately doing this so that I could have a good life at the end of the day. And so, I want to talk about today some of the things that I'm doing to increase that cash flow, increase that liquidity. On the financing side with my deals, some of the options that I'm looking at to, de-risk my portfolio. Because I think every investor should go through the same seasons that I'm going through. I think if you're listening to this and you have no units and no net worth and no retirement, I think you should take all the risk in the world. You have nothing to lose. I started this when I was 21. I was very aggressive with my growth. I was very aggressive with taking risks because if I lost everything, I really didn't have that much to lose at the end of the day. And so that served me really well because I was able to take a lot of risk. Now I'm 30 years old. I have a really high net worth. I have a wife. I have a child. I have, all of these responsibilities. Now, if I lose everything that I've worked so hard for, it would be devastating. It would be very, I don't want to say difficult to build it back because I know that I could, but I would lose a lot of time. I would lose probably 5 years of building just from making that reckless mistake. And so I think every investor should start from a season of aggressive growth, assuming that your goal is to make as much money as possible and your goal is to, get as high of a net worth and create wealth for you and your family. If that's your goal, you should go through a season of aggressive growth, followed by a season of stabilization, improving your systems, improving your processes, increasing your liquidity, and then followed by another season of aggressive growth. Or perhaps that third season is more steady growth. Because if every single year you're just grow, you're going to make a mistake and you're going to get yourself into trouble. And even if you're part of the rare statistic that doesn't get yourself into trouble, even if there's a 5% chance, I'm not willing to take that risk personally. So I'm doing everything that I can right now to really, improve my systems and increase my income. Okay, so what does that mean specifically? So one of the first things that I'm doing is I am really getting more involved in all of my active businesses. And so my property management business, for example, I have implemented so many different systems that I didn't have last year to really systematize the business. The biggest issue for my property management business last year in 2025 was that the business really couldn't move without my involvement. And so there was a lot of babysitting that was needed on my end. We had employees, we had, members of the team who were great. We still have those members of the team, but a lot of things were slipping through the cracks. There were errors on the leases, utilities weren't transferred into, the tenant's name properly. And I can give dozens of examples like this, just small things that were slipping through the cracks. And my wife and I had to be the ones who were kind of micromanaging those processes and saying, hey, why didn't this get done? And correcting things. And I knew that wasn't sustainable if I wanted to, really have peace of mind and not have to worry about my businesses and ultimately be able to grow more in the long term. If I'm too busy micromanaging working in the business, I'm never really going to have that time to grow the business. And so I did a few things. I joined an investment group. I hired a mentor. I paid money for education. And I recommend everyone here does that. It significantly quantum leaps your success. I'm not saying that because I'm a mentor. I really don't care if you hire me as a mentor. Hire any real estate mentor. Hire any business coach that's credible, and it will be 100% worth it. I can say, the amount that I've paid for education has 10 to 20x to 30x my success. I mean, the amount that I've paid versus the value that I've gotten is not even close. So it's not a shameless plug, I promise you. You should get a mentor. It's 100% worth it, no question. But this group I'm in, my mentor is very good about, systems and processes and keeping his costs low. And so we've implemented a few CRMs. One of them, we switched from RentReady to AppFolio. And AppFolio it's just a much better software than RentReady is. It's amazing for collections, for maintenance. Leasing has come a long way with AppFolio. The bookkeeping has definitely come a long way with AppFolio. And there's just a lot more AI and automation in AppFolio than there was RentReady. And so, trying to kind of step aside from the business, getting into AppFolio was 100% the right decision. They don't allow you to use AppFolio unless you have 50 units. So if you're starting out, if you don't have 50 units, RentReady is a great CRM. That's what I used up until I got to like 300 units or something like that. It has all the features that you need, and it's very affordable compared to other things that are out there. And you need to care about that. When you're starting out as an entrepreneur, don't listen to the entrepreneurs that tell you that you should just make more income. Because that's true, you should make more income, but you should also have an obsession with cutting your costs, personally and from a business perspective. The people that I know who are kind of willy-nilly about their personal expenses, that tends to sort of gravitate towards their business expenses. And so I've always had an obsession with frugality. Like to this day with my net worth, I have an extreme obsession with frugality. I keep my labor costs low for my construction business. I hire VAs. I have employees from Pakistan and the Philippines, whose, their cost of labor is much lower. And frankly, they work harder and better than people in the United States that I've hired, in my opinion. And so, and then hiring unnecessary, marketing agencies, property management, general contractors, consulting, accountants, tax advisors. I mean, there's so many ways that you can just completely waste your money as a real estate investor and as an entrepreneur. And if you don't really give a crap about keeping your costs low and you don't have an obsession with, just being frugal in every which way possible, I think you're going to fail. And so that's very important to me. But anyways, so use RentRedi if you're newer to the business. I think it's a great software. So I transitioned to Appfolio. That's been great for my business. Another CRM that we've been using is Monday.com. I look at this as a workflow CRM and a quality control CRM. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with Monday, essentially every single step in every single process of my business is on Monday. So if our leasing agent signs a lease and places a tenant, well, there's a lot of things that go in between that. Did they walk the unit to make sure it was clean for the tenant to move in? Do we have occupancy? Are the utilities in the tenant's name? Did they sign the lease? Do they have renter's insurance? I could go on and on. There's so many examples of this. And so every single one of those steps are on Monday.com, and my leasing agents have to sign off on each of those steps individually before, they can officially, get paid for signing a lease. And so having each of those steps in the CRM removes the need for me to have to make sure that each of those steps are done, because they have to sign off on each of those steps before they can get paid. And then I have a quality control VA who's verifying that all of those things were actually done. And obviously, if an employee were to lie about doing something and just marking it off on Monday, that's immediate termination. I've never had that happen. Every time it's been a genuine mistake. But mistakes are significantly farther and fewer in between. So that's been really great for the property management business. The other thing that we've done is we've required daily reports. So our quality control VA sends daily reports to everyone on the team. And so that goes to everyone on the team on a daily basis. But on a weekly basis, everyone on the team has to respond to that daily report with anything that applies to them. And so I constantly have I know what's going on with my business on a daily basis, and I know where each team member is at on a weekly basis when they respond to that. So that's been really big for us. Another thing that we've implemented are weekly meetings. In 2025, we did not meet with our team regularly. Now, every single week in my property management business, Tuesday evening, we are all meeting and we're discussing all of the things in the daily reports, all of the KPIs, anything new that's taking place with the business. We're discussing all of those things. Another thing that we are about to implement that I'm very excited about is we are hiring on a head property manager. So we're hiring someone who's basically replacing what my wife and I do, and they are the quote unquote micromanager, or they are the glue that's keeping everything together. If something's slipping through the cracks, it's her responsibility. Hiring and firing team members, that's her responsibility. Hosting the weekly meetings, that's her responsibility. Going to the properties in case of emergency, that's her responsibility. So she is essentially removing me from that business. And so now I can focus on other businesses. And so that's just a handful of examples of things that I've implemented. These are things that I talk about all the time. It's completely changed my business. It's completely changed the success of my business, the income, the revenue of my business. That's another thing, just a quick side note before I get into changes that I've made in other businesses. Quick side note is, shoot, I lost my train of thought. So I will get into the changes that I've made in the construction business, and then that'll come back to me. Some changes that I've made in the construction business. So we have also hired an assistant project manager. So similar to hiring my head property manager, having that assistant project manager has been huge for us. That assistant project manager deals with, the project management of all the jobs. He deals with the client communication. And we have some clients who could be very overbearing, asking a lot of questions. And so that has been huge for us. He is to look at the financials of each job, make sure that they're profitable. And he is also sending us daily reports so that we know, what's happening with the business. We have also hired VAs for that business. So we have a VA that handles the finances, the bookkeeping, and we have a VA that handles the maintenance in that business. And so the assistant project manager, his job is also to manage those VAs. And so that has been really big for us as well. That's what I was going to say. One of my big epiphanies this year has been treating my businesses like businesses. And so I found myself early in my business, essentially trying to do everything for free to make the deal work. I'll manage for free. I'll do the construction, at cost. And several examples like this. Working very, very hard, which I'm very grateful for, and I still work very hard, but doing everything for free for the sake of making my partner happy and for the sake of the deal. And my businesses just haven't been striving. My active businesses have not been striving as much as they should. My real estate business has been doing great, but the other active businesses have not been doing nearly as good as I know that they should. And so now I'm treating those businesses like businesses. I'm charging what those companies are worth. I'm hiring the right team members constantly, interviewing for the right team members. I'm setting the right systems in place, the right CRMs in place. I'm taking everything with those businesses very seriously, and I'm treating them like a business, even if the work that they're doing is for my own properties. Whereas before, if it was for my own property, everything would be done for free for the sake of making the deal a really smoking hot deal and making everything work from the deal's perspective. So I have changed that. I'm very excited about that. I would advise everyone who's in real estate investing, if you have vertically integrated businesses, which eventually everyone listening to this should, having vertically integrated businesses has fundamentally changed the success of my real estate investments. I mean, having control of my construction, having control of my property management. I have so many horror stories with bad property managers and bad contractors, and this has been a complete game changer for me. So you should be vertically integrated when you can be. That should be the goal at least. The other business that I've made some changes to is my education business. So that's multifamily methods. I mentor people. I have a course. I have a great relationship with the marketing agency that I use, but I've decided to take things into my own hands, do some things in-house. And I've just found, kind of similar to a property manager, if I'm doing it myself, I can give it that extra level of detail. And so I have a VA who is, editing my content. I've hired a videographer myself. He's actually one of my mentees that I meet with on a weekly basis. He takes all my videos, puts it in a Dropbox file. My VA edits it all, posts it out. I have someone who is an expert in funnels who's sort of hosting my webinars. And so I really have more control over all of the outcomes because I am paying these people directly. And so I think for my education business, people who've been following me a long time know this about me, but my biggest regret as an entrepreneur is not taking social media more seriously earlier on. And so now I'm taking social media much more seriously. I'm hiring the people that I need for that business. And I know that it's going to pay off. I've had so many deals, so much money, so many great relationships that have come because of my exposure in social media. And I only have, a few thousand followers on Instagram and a few thousand followers on TikTok, couple to a few thousand friends on Facebook. And so imagine what all of this could do if I had 10,000 or 100,000 or a million followers. The impact and the credibility that, I would have if I had that many followers in social media would just be absolutely life-changing. And so I'm taking that a lot more seriously. Other thing I'm doing. So I have very much deleveraged my portfolio. I've paid off a lot of real estate free and clear, which if you're listening to this as a real estate investor, I highly recommend every single person listening to this eventually has a goal of paying off your real estate. I don't care what Grant Cardone tells you. I don't care what you hear on social media. It is 1000% worth it. Even if financially it's quote unquote a bad decision, you'll move along a little bit slower in, growing your net worth. Who gives two rats behind? Paying off your real estate gives you significant peace of mind. It gives you much more options. It increases your cash flow. It delevers you. I don't care what anyone says. It has been one of the best decisions that I've made personally and professionally. In so doing that, in paying off some of my real estate, including my primary residence, so I currently have about $1.5 million of real estate free and clear. I'm about to pay off another $500,000 this year, so that'll bring me to $2 million. But the $1.5 million that I have free and clear, I have a line of credit on those properties. So I was able to go to a commercial bank. They have a lien in the first position on my free and clear properties, just like a refinance. And they've given me a line of credit. And so with that line of credit, I'm able to lend to other investors. I was able to essentially start a hard money lending company. And so now I am the lender, and hard money is something that I so strongly believe in. I've probably had a couple hundred of hard money loans in my career. It's completely changed my life. It's allowed me to buy multiple pieces of property, hundreds of pieces of property with no money down, property that I wouldn't be able to purchase otherwise. I am where I am today because of hard money and because of private money. So it's something I very much believe in. But now I have a hard money company. I can lend over $1 million of, lines of credit. My cost is like 7%, and I can charge 12% in hard money. 12% still a decent deal. Some hard money lenders charge 13, 15%. So my investors are getting a good deal. They're getting flexibility of working with someone who understands real estate. They don't have to get an appraisal. They don't have to work with a disbursement company. It's very easy to work with me as a lender. And that's another income stream for me, which is exactly what I'm looking for in 2026. All these changes that I'm making in 2026 to really deleverage, to increase my income, to increase my liquidity. One thing that's really helped my success is that even where I'm at today with the cash, the income, the net worth, I'm still very responsible with my money. I still have a high level of frugality. I'm spending maybe 20% of my income. 80% of my income goes into savings and investments. And so I'm still, even though I technically don't have to, I am stacking up cash in savings to build up my reserves, to build up my liquidity, so that no matter what happens, I will not lose my portfolio. And I think that's a really good obsession to have as an investor. There's so many investors out there who get themselves into trouble. And even at the level that I'm at, I have not been guilty of lifestyle creep. I could have a much nicer house, much nicer cars, much nicer toys, whatever. And I choose not to. I choose to continue to stack up cash. And some people listening to this might be like, well, when are you going to live life? Like, what's the point of all of this if you're not enjoying yourself? Buying a few Lamborghinis is not going to make me happier. Buying a bigger house is not going to make me happier. The peace of mind is, and the act of working, the act of winning and having success is what makes me happy. So I don't think I would be any happier if I was spending my money differently. In fact, I'd probably be less happy because I'd have less peace of mind. So for all the people out there saying, well, you only live once, enjoy your life. Well, I am enjoying my life. I'm spending my money wisely, and I like the way that I'm spending my money, and I have tremendous peace of mind because of the way that I'm spending my money. Now, one day, look, if I have a 9-figure net worth and I can buy 5 Lamborghinis, and it literally, if I burn the Lamborghinis in my backyard and it makes no difference in my lifestyle, then okay, maybe I'll get some Lamborghinis and, a nicer Rolex and develop my dream home or something like that. If I could literally burn it and it doesn't matter, then great. But if I burn 5 Lamborghinis in my backyard today, I'd be pretty upset about that. So I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not ready to just buy stupid toys. And it's not affecting my happiness. People with those materialistic things are probably no happier than I am. And to me, like I said, the happiness comes from winning, working, solving problems, and just trying to be as useful as I could possibly be. So that is my update for this week, guys. Thank you for tuning in to the 3rd episode of the Multifamily Methods Real Estate Podcast. And those are some transitions that I'm making in 2026. So hope that was valuable for you all. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.